since America with Eden Cornell. Yeah.
And good morning, good morning, good morning. What a beautiful day in 2023. It is so great to be back with each and every one of you. It is Tuesday, January the 3rd, and I just want to wish each and every one of you a happy new year. Thank you so much for joining our pre-record yesterday to kick off this week with Money Talk with Melanie and Melanie Colette. She did a phenomenal job as we enter into this new year, as we enter into what is ahead for each and every one of our families and our kitchen table discussions. You know, I'm so glad to be back here with each and every one of you. I was sitting here reading Rush Limbaugh's book, Radio's Greatest of All Time, hearing all the different commentary from what everyone said about Rush. He was my noontime date every day, and he was such an inspiration to a young conservative mind like myself. And I was sitting here just reading it and just seeing everything that he went through in his career to get where he wanted, to believe in what he did. And that was our conservative values and our American way. And I'm just so glad that I was raised in a family that listened to Rush. Thank you, Dad, for inspiring me. Thank you, Dad, for leading the way in my conservative mindset, my faith. And also thank you for introducing me to Rush. So I am sitting here. I got the book for Christmas from a dear friend who is in my Bible study. So Libby, thank you so much. And I know my father actually has the book as well. So I'm looking forward to reading it more in depth. But I wanted to kick off this new year with you. You know, I'm sitting here and we have a lot of discussions to talk about. I've done a lot of pre-records over the holiday. I don't know how your holiday was. Mine was a little different. I was not able to be with family for many, many reasons. But on the other side, I was really able to have some be still and know that I am God time. And I would never trade that for anything. And I was grateful to be in that space. I was grateful to be resting and spending time with my husband and giving to my neighbors and doing what I normally do at Christmas, but it was just a little different just because of travel issues and things of that nature. My husband and I just kept it very quiet this Christmas season. But in that, I was able to gather up food, gather up gifts, and go and deliver to people who I'm thankful for in our community here in Eastern North Carolina. And so I was able and glad to be able to do that. You know, what is it just to go pick up a pizza and go deliver it to a neighbor who may have been running around like crazy, not having time to make dinner? And there's nothing like a gift, to just a thoughtful gift, whether it's food or whether it's something else. And I was able to experience that, receive that, and also give that. And I'm just so grateful for the past couple weeks of having the rest, the be still and know that I am God time. Also, I wanted to introduce you, if you have not picked up this book, my neighbor at our neighborhood, Betty Evans, introduced me to Harris Faulkner, who's with Fox News. Her book is called Faith Still Moves Mountains. And I have been going through it. It is a very thin read in many senses. They're individual devotionals, if you will, scripture, prayer, and the power of stories and storytelling of people that she's interviewed over the years, and she brought them to the forefront. One of my favorite ones in this book, and it is a New York Times bestseller. I'm not fond of the New York Times anymore, but I love that it's doing so well, especially in the faith realm. I think so many of us, we experience different Christmases, and I heard that from a lot of people. Christmas just seemed different this year. And I think so many of us are experiencing different things that are new in an unknown space to us. And it potentially is the culture wars, potentially is what is happening in our public square with our faith. It has a lot to do with going on in our society, whether it's in our neighborhood or whether it's at the highest levels of our federal government. And also, by the way, the 118th Congress opens up today on Capitol Hill, and there's quite the controversy going on with Kevin McCarthy being potentially the next Speaker of the House. And you know what, Republicans, for those Republican in name only, you are showing your true colors. But for those conservative Republicans who have been elected, whether you are newly elected or returning to Congress, please stand up and stand up for what is right for our country. And show yourselves to be discerning with our dollars. Show yourselves to be wise with what you've been called to do for such a time as this. And also, you know what? Stop acting like Democrats and pull your pants up, grow up, and look out for the American people, because we put you there and we are your bosses. So start doing something, and don't already start the cat fights, the junior high fights amongst yourselves, because you are just setting yourselves up for failure. I would rather not see that. I would actually like you guys to do something. We put you there for a reason. I'm calling out North Carolina. We got some new senators there. Hey, Ted Budd. Hey, Congressman Greg Murphy. We're watching. I still vote here in the state of North Carolina, and I'm watching. But hey, Pennsylvania. Hey, Fetterman. I grew up in the great state of Pennsylvania, and I saw what happened to my state last year with regards to Fetterman. What the heck, people? So let's see if Fetterman is actually going to put on a suit. You think so? Or is he going to show up to the Senate in his sweatpants like he just came from a football game? What an embarrassment to the United States. So, for all of you listening in, watching, or if you watch it later, you're going to hear my rant on what we need to be looking for as we head into this 2023. From a faith perspective, spending time with Jesus every morning and every night. From a political conservative commentary perspective, talking about Rush Limbaugh and the foundation he left for so many of my friends who are in the radio and TV industry, who believe in Jesus, but also believe in our conservative and American values. But also to me, I have this podcast, Common Sense America with Eden Hill, and it was born out of me running for a state elected official office. It was born out of me running, knowing that I have convictions, and I am going to be like an Esther for such a time as this. Be strong, be courageous, get in the fight, get in the circle. Don't let them tell you what to do. All of you out there, whether you watch it now or whether you watch it later, you know I like to stir the pot, but I don't like to stir the pot to create chaos. I stir the pot because I want to reveal truth. I want to talk about what is ahead for our precious nation, our precious United States of America. I have the flag back there. I have Rosie the Riveter back there. I'm a lot like Rosie. I have my husband, my grandfather, my father-in-law's military pictures, because there's so much that they have fought for our freedoms. And then we let AOC and all of those Green Deal mindsets come to the forefront to try and destroy everything my husband fought for, my grandfather and my father-in-law fought for? I don't think so. So when I say I stir the pot because I want truth. I don't want to be lied to. I don't want to be bullied by elected officials. I want truth. I want accountability. And I'm asking each and every one of you, whether you live here in Eastern North Carolina, where we reside currently, whether you live in California and are under Newsom and his regime, or whether you're in the great state of Maine, or if you're under Holcomb and New York. I know a lot of my viewers are from the North, and I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for the friendships. The foundation I've built over the years, I've worked hard for, and no one can take that away. Whether there are people in this local area that don't like me because I do like to stir the pot and reveal truth, or whether they don't like me because I don't look like them, I don't sound like them, well, I don't care. I'm here to tell the truth. Wherever this podcast goes, whether it continues to go to great lengths to reveal truth, it's out there, and I want to bring truth to each and every one of you, to your kitchen tables. My dear friend, Kirsten Fidowa, I love her dearly. She's another person I want to thank for the friendship for all these years. There is so much that we have done to preserve this precious country. But we don't look for the accolades like a lot of newly elected leaders do. We are quiet and behind the scenes. We serve, we take an oath, we serve because we believe in the very foundation and the fabric of the American dream. Free enterprise, gun rights. Yeah, I like to shoot. I like to go shoot. I like to go out. My husband and I, he has taught me how to shoot properly. Doves, deer. And we're going to be talking about our gun rights today, people. Yeah. Because if Biden has his way, or Biden has his way, we may lose those, and we cannot afford that. It should be a state matter, not a federal matter. The interview you're going to hear about this morning is with American Liberty News. Victoria Churchill, I had the privilege to meet end of last year. We met through a mutual friend. We both served under 45, which is Donald Trump. We both believe in a lot of the same conservative values, and that is our gun rights. 2A. Yep. Whether you live in the North, in the South, in the Midwest, knowing how to carry a gun, having a license to carry is a great privilege, people. I remember when I ran for state house, I had one of the local old boys club radio guys interview me. So what's your favorite gun you like to shoot? And I got criticized for listing all of my favorite guns. What, because I'm a female and I know how to shoot them all? Come on. Don't criticize me for listing all of my favorite guns. There's nothing wrong with understanding and having the ability to know how to use a gun properly. But I want to tell you something. I'm going to open up with this as we head into this pre-recorded segment with Victoria Churchill. I highlighted some news sources that we are talking about here. Again, American Liberty News. I have highlighted those sources on this feed, on this live feed that is airing on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. It's also on Twitter right now. And then it'll also be placed on my Rumble account at the end of this show. But Victoria Churchill and I had a great conversation. And at the beginning of this segment, I just want to tell you that the current leader in the Oval Office says there's more than about 40,000 people who are affected by gun violence. But I will tell you this, I did some research on the current leader and his numbers. I mean, everything's skewed. Everything's a spin cycle, and I'm not talking about your laundry. But if you look at the real data, don't go to the White House. May not even go to Congress. More than 8 million people a year are suffering from mental health, not gun violence. Pin could drop there, couldn't it? Think about that for a second. So, a couple articles I want to open with before we bring over my pre-recorded segment with Victoria Churchill. I want to make sure you follow her on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. She's all over the place. She's a phenomenal conservative American who believes in 2A. And she's going to be presenting a lot of the articles she worked on last year on American Liberty News, but also she's going to be talking a lot about what is ahead. Here's something I want to highlight to each and every one of you. Half of the United States now recognize constitutional carry. Half. So we're going to be talking about that. Keep that in mind. But also, If you want to do a comparison of common sense, look at the states that are struggling with that and look at their crime and look at rape, look at the murder. You want to say New York? You want to say California? Just you can compare. It's common sense. It's common sense. It's about 9:15 on Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023. And before we go into our segment, we'll be dropping that at 9:30. A couple other things I wanted to talk to you about. Embellish me. Over the holiday season, I got to see so many people. But a lot of people said to me, Eden, we're sorry. Instantly, they said, Eden, we're sorry. We haven't been able to watch your show. I'm like, well, you don't have to apologize and you don't even have to bring it up. I mean, it's okay. I had many people in different circles say that to me. But here's the thing, you don't have to worry about watching it live. You can go over to YouTube anytime. I upload all my shows to YouTube. I haven't been censored yet, thank God. Also to Rumble, if you decide you don't like YouTube, and it's at Common Sense America with Eden Hill. This podcast is very popular in the Northern Territories, which I love. Not so much here in North Carolina, where I've lived for quite a long time and ran for state house, but that's okay too. Maybe Eastern North Carolina and the newly elected leaders will actually tune in, because you know what? I bring a lot of new guests here to the table. We always have young voices here who I love. They have great contributors, and you're going to hear more of them later this week. We also bring a lot of commentary from National Center, Able Americans, Project 21. We also are bringing commentary, like I just mentioned, Kirsten Fedewa. We brought American Humane, Special Operations Association of America, and many others. So for all of you in Eastern North Carolina who are a little skeptical, you know what? You're going to find truth here, because we talk with Family Research Council. We highlight Daily Signal. We highlight the truth, like I mentioned, and we're going to be bringing more and more new guests. But to all of those who do tune in live during the time that we are doing this podcast, thank you, because I love speaking with you. I love coming to you. But more than anything, God gave me this time to be with you for such a time as this. For as long as I breathe and live, I want to be able to talk to each and every one of you. I want to talk about the issues that are facing your family, that are facing your children, that are facing our finances, that are facing our savings accounts, that are facing our gas tanks, that are facing our communities, homelessness, the migrants, the border. Whether you live in North Carolina or Pennsylvania or New York or whatever, you are a border state. And that is something that we can either keep our heads in the sand, or we can actually have these real conversations. But I also want to talk with you about your faith. What gets you, and what are your new year, new you visions for 2023? Because there's so much that we can really focus on. I had a call yesterday and I was so energized. The scales had been removed from the eyes, which is biblical. And I had a new vision in front of me, and new thoughts and new dreams and new initiatives and perseverance. And I was sharing with the person some of those things, not all of them, because I think that they were still stuck in 2022. And I found myself stuck in 2022 just a day or two ago, thinking I lost all of this time and I didn't get all this stuff done. But then I thought, you know what? Let's flip the vision. Let's flip the mentality. Let's think about all the opportunities that lay before us in 2023. The excitement of new birth, the excitement of a new journey, the excitement of new steps, the excitement of new opportunities, the excitement of new community, the excitement of new gatherings. There's so much ahead for each and every one of us. And it's not to Congress to dictate how our lives are going to run. It is to our gut, our faith, our demeanor, what makes us tick, that integrity piece, what guides us each day, what is our lighthouse each day. And it can't be government, it can't be local government, it can't be politics, it can't be a human being, it can't be your spouse, it can't be your kid, but it can be something greater. And that's God. And we all need to be turning back to him. The culture wars of this nation have really torn down, have teared apart a lot of what has been happening in our churches, in our schools, in our private schools. And so we, as a nation, we need to come back to our knees. I'm preaching to me. Every night now, not just every morning, do I end the day with, whether it's in Harris Faulkner's book, and no, I'm not getting anything to promote this book. I'm grateful I have this book, and I'm actually sending it out as gifts to people. And for those it's just popping up in your mailbox from Amazon, that's me. I may not put a note there. It's just because it's just so powerful. And I end each day with this book, and I'm grateful that I was introduced to it. But I also start the day with my cup of coffee, which I still have my Christmas mug, and Jesus to get this day started. So as I pour my heart out to you this amazing Tuesday morning, a couple new things I'm putting before you to share with you and my excitement for 2023. That is, tell you what, new projects coming right down the pike. I'm excited to work on new projects that enhance and talk about conservative voices at the very forefront, changing policy, changing the hearts and minds of our next generation, changing and making a difference, not a progressive Green New Deal agenda, but talking conservative values, faith values of what this country stands for. That's one new project. Another new project is, you guys know how much I love education. And for many of you, you knew that I was accepted into Harvard Extension. And, I know Harvard has gone completely woke. It does not stand for the excellence and the values it once stood for. And I absolutely adore the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. So I sit there and say, I want to take other opportunities for education and pursuing greater education. I love Liberty. I love my schooling that I received there, and I love Regent University. And Regent seems to me that it may be a better fit for me from a faith standpoint. It's a great Ivy League school, excellence, and they have not gone woke. And so I sit there and say, that's another opportunity, another journey of just expanding my education even more. So those are new things on the forefront for here at Common Sense America and this amazing podcast. A lot is coming down the pike for each and every one of us. But I want to be there to support each and every one of you. And I want to be there to talk it out. Let's talk it out. Let's have some great conversations. Let's engage one another. Even if we don't meet eye to eye, that's okay too. But I want to have dialogue where we can get to the very root of what is affecting maybe our hearts, our minds, our spirits. And also to just get up every morning and, you know what, scare the crap out of the devil. Because when my feet hit the ground, I'm on a roll and I'm not going to stop. For such a time as this, ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot ahead of us. For such a time as this, we need to be strong. We need to be courageous. We need to focus on perseverance. We need to focus on our faith, and we need to focus on what we believe in, because that is the very core of the fabric of America. Not China, not anything else. Okay, as we head into this rest of this short week with this holiday observance yesterday, we had Money Talk with Melanie. And I tell you what, I want to tell you something really quickly before we bring over Victoria. Money Talk with Melanie, you guys see at least once a week here. She's with Project 21. She's also with Money Talk with Melanie, 98.7 The Coast. She was recognized as Save Jersey's Right Women to Watch in 2023. And let me just tell you, Miss Melanie Collette is number 10. Number 10 for Save Jersey, Jersey's number one source of conservative news, commentary, humor, and analysis. And also on the list, my dear friend Elizabeth Nader as well. She is the founder of Common Sense Club and A Seat at the Table, and she is impacting and advocating for changes in the Garden State. I am so proud to know two very powerful women, women of faith, women in leadership who have made this list. Congratulations, Melanie. Congratulations, Elizabeth. You guys have met Elizabeth, and we will look to bring her back. She is just a force for the conservative movement. Also, tomorrow, we will be bringing back to the show Salih Hudayar, who is the Prime Minister of East Turkestan in exile. And we are talking about some heavy issues. The new Select Commission of China that will be happening in the House. We're going to be talking about the genocide. We're going to be talking about the concentration camps, the sex slavery, and the human trafficking. Yes, those are hard issues, but we need to talk about them. That will be tomorrow, as well as Young Voices, Gabriella Hoffman. We're going to be talking all things politics, probably some commercial fishing, and what is ahead for many of the states with regards to commercial fishing. We are also going to be talking with another, let's see, who do we have? Oh, yes, Amanda Griffiths, who is one of my favorites from California. She is an educator, and she is a senior contributor to Young Voices. She'll be here on Thursday. And I'll tell you what, we have had a phenomenal conversation. These were pre-recorded as well. We've had a phenomenal conversation, and it talked a lot about California and Florida. 2024 announcements, election integrity, what's ahead. So we're going to be hitting it hard there. And last but not least, I'm just going to do this plug. No, I'm not the strategic communications director for Governor Ron DeSantis. Would I like to be? Yeah, I would definitely love to be, but I'm not that. I am a communications strategist for a lot of conservative commentators, and I'm honored to do that. But if you haven't reserved your book yet, make sure you go to Amazon and pick up Governor DeSantis's new book that's coming out February, I believe it's the 28th. And coordination with President's Weekend and President's Day in February. And, you know, I have my own dream ticket, and you'll be hearing about that. Actually, you heard about that yesterday. My dream ticket is DeSantis and Carrie Lake. No loyalty lost to my previous employer, but I'd love to see a young visionary who served in the United States military lead our country and really bring back the integrity to the office of the presidency. So on that note, we're going to take a quick break, and enough from me. The rest of the show will be with Victoria Churchill. And I just want to thank American Liberty News. We're going to be talking with Victoria in just a minute. We'll be right back. I am Eden Hill, and we're back hitting this new year hard. I hope you feel refreshed, renewed, and ready to take and hit the ground running. We have a very powerful 2023 ahead for each and every one of you. The show is all about God, country, and family. And this show is about kitchen table discussions and topics that are facing the American family, that are facing our nation's backyard. And so this morning, I have the amazing honor to bring to the show a new face, a new feature, a special guest, Victoria Snitzer Churchill. She is with American Liberty News. She is a proud immigrant and naturalized United States citizen with a decade of experience in grassroots politics and community organizing. Welcome and good morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Eden. It's really a joy to be on with you today. So glad we can make this happen, and really happy to start the new year off chatting with you and your audience today.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, I think we need to get right to it. There's a couple of things that are very concerning as we head into this new year, and that is our Second Amendment rights. And living here in the great state of North Carolina and being married to a full-on redneck, our gun rights are very important to us. And, I say that with a little humor, but I say that with a lot of seriousness. Looking at the Biden dictatorship and how he's trying to take our gun rights away. And, I'm going to quote something before we head into some of the great articles that you are citing as we head into this new year. He said back in 2022, almost 40,000 people die as a result of a firearm injury every year in the United States. But let me just point out something really quickly. Did you guys know and realize that more than 8 million people die a year from mental health issues? Did you hear the pin drop there? I did. My concern is our gun rights. That 2A, I wear it with pride. I know how to shoot a gun. I love my AR, and I'm being very open and honest. And you know what? Oh, Biden, you can take it and stick it. So let's talk about what is happening and all around our nation. I see from your data and what you have provided this morning, there's about half the United States that allows us to carry, and then the other half does not, like Illinois, like New York, like New Jersey, and probably Pennsylvania, all the states that I grew up in. And unfortunately, they think it's a big joke. But at the end of the day, South Dakota, Florida, and other great states see it as our rights, which are God-given. And so talk to me, break it down for me. What does it look like this year? Are we going to see more legislation, more executive orders from the Biden dictatorship and the new Republican Congress? Or do you think we are going to be able to have our rights to carry?
So, like you said, half of America currently has their constitutional rights, Second Amendment rights. Half the states in America currently support those. They've passed legislation at the state level that supports them. Now, the other half, you're kind of, out of luck there. But some of these governors in states that have not passed constitutional carry yet, such as Governor DeSantis in Florida, have pledged to make this a priority for their upcoming state legislative sessions. And I think really when it comes to states' rights, the 10th Amendment, where state level legislation can sometimes supersede constitutional, there's really nowhere where that's more apparent than in terms of the Second Amendment. Throughout the past year, or I guess in 2022, I covered extensively a lot of the developments that happened both at the state level and on the national level. There's some good things and some bad things that we know are coming down the pipeline here in 2023. So first, let's just take a quick look back at 2022. What happened? So there was 4 states that passed constitutional carry last year. It was Alabama, Indiana, Ohio, and Georgia. So those 4 governors, 4 Republican governors, ingrained those constitutional rights into their states. Also notably, the state of Iowa passed an amendment to their state constitution where basically the Second Amendment right that is present in the U.S. Constitution now also appears in the Iowa Constitution, which again is very important because laws can be repealed, but it's a lot harder to, check something out of a state constitution. That's pretty much ingrained there. And that kind of means, going forward, if there's legal issues, you can actually have something ruled unconstitutional, both at the state level, as well as at the national level. And that's important because half of the fights that go on in Second Amendment world are legislative, but also there's a lot of litigation that goes on. There's lots of great groups, the NRA, obviously one
Yes.
of the more prominent ones,
Yes.
but also some smaller ones like Second Amendment Foundation. They do a lot of great legal on the ground work in states,
Mhm.
fighting back against, both states that aren't upholding rights under the federal constitution, but also legislation that may be passed by some very left-leaning state legislatures, and trying to make sure that it's not implemented on the, in that state.
Right.
And sometimes even it's not the legislatures, it's the voters. One thing that happened in the 2022 midterms, which was a very big deal in the Second Amendment community, was the state of Oregon passing what was known as ballot measure 114, which set a lot of different restrictions on Second Amendment rights in Oregon.
Mhm.
This included a permit to purchase. So you had to go ahead and obtain a permit for every single firearm that you want to purchase in that state. There's
Mhm.
also magazine capacity limits, which renders some very, common firearms a lot less useful because you can carry less magazines. And, if you have magazines that are beyond that and you have that on your person, you could even be getting into felony territory like Washington, D.C.'s gun
Right.
laws, which are some of the most
Right.
restrictive. So, really it's kind of this mishmash, any TV show or movie that you have where it's like the
Mhm.
lasers and you're ducking up and down. I think
Yep.
that's a very good, realistic representation of what it looks like to be a gun owner in America today, unfortunately.
Well, you know
Um,
what? I want to say something really quickly to that. You said restrictive. DC is one of the greatest, aspects of this country that's very restrictive. So is New York. But who has the guns then? It's the criminals. It's the criminals that have the guns. It's the criminals that potentially may have mental health issues. It's those who have that. And it's not those who believe in 2A. And so, my question to you is, as I travel through DC to go up to Pennsylvania, New York, and New Jersey, where's am I allowed to cross the border with a gun if I have a license to carry, or if I get pulled over, what's going to happen? But it's all about defending oneself. It's all about protecting a person's homeland. It's about protecting, our rights. So, what do we do, those who are understanding of what it is to have a license to carry? What do we do? Where are our rights?
so you really hit a good point on the right kind of nail on the head there, is that because of the legislation that exists, the East. So I grew up on the West Coast. We basically have three states that line the West Coast. On the East Coast, it's what, like 15, right?
Yeah,
Or
about
the
that.
original 13 colonies, right? Plus
Yep.
whatever extended down south. So there's a lot more states. If you're driving up 95, like I did when I was in North Carolina recently, where I met
Yeah.
you. Shout out to our mutual friend Kimmy for really making this happen.
Yes.
Hope she's doing well. She's a great person in both of our lives that really put us together. But as you're traveling up and down the East Coast, you can be an hour in one state and an hour the next hour in another state
Yes.
and then in another state. Living
Yes.
in Northern Virginia, the National Capital Region, uh, you know, crossing state lines, right? Going back to the good old Rittenhouse trial of last year, the crossing state lines enthusiasts.
Yes.
There's a lot of
Yes.
them, and crossing state lines and maybe even multiple state lines in a day is really a reality for anybody that lives in Northern Virginia. With the onset of things like remote work, there's a lot of people that move out to Loudoun County and maybe even West Virginia. I know some people that have moved from Washington, D.C. to West Virginia because they can
Yes.
actually buy a house and they
Yes.
like the laws there a lot better. Some people
Yes.
have moved from Virginia to West Virginia.
Mhm.
And so, if you're commuting from West Virginia to DC, you're going potentially through Virginia and Maryland if you're taking the Beltway.
Mhm.
So you have to make sure if you want to have a gun, where in Bruin last year the Supreme Court decided or ruled that your 2A rights don't stop at your doorstep. I came into the 2A space as a concealed carry activist. I always used to say on campus, my gun rights don't stop at the schoolhouse door,
Mhm.
and now they don't stop at my doorstep.
Mhm.
So to have our rights and to be in compliance, you have to
Mhm.
make sure that you know those gun laws. And so it really places, I think, personally, a very undue burden on law abiding gun owners that just want to protect themselves, protect their families. And, DC is kind of its own beast, because there are limits on carrying in federal buildings, on government property. So that's kind of its own, I guess, can of worms there. But for example, even as a Washington, D.C. concealed carry permit holder, which Washington, D.C. is one of the hardest places to get a license to carry in the entire country, you're not even allowed to conceal carry that gun within the state of Maryland unless you have a Maryland permit. Maryland does not have reciprocity from D.C. Parts of D.C. are 2 minutes away from the state of Maryland.
That makes no sense whatsoever.
Absolutely not. And the kicker there is that the permitting requirements within the state of Maryland are identical to those in Washington, D.C. But you have to go through their own system to get that permit.
I literally almost gag every time I have to drive through the state of Maryland. I went to school there for a hot second, and I took a sneeze, and I just wish that state would be gone or have a better government. That state legislature, Annapolis is a beautiful city, a beautiful part of the state. I think that's the only good thing that state has, because it brings forth great midshipmen who go on to be amazing officers and Marines. So grateful to the United States Naval Academy. But on that side note, they even need to know how to carry a gun and learn how to shoot a gun. And that's part of their training. So you would think that the state, you would think that the state of Maryland would shape up. But I think they just need to ship out, no pun intended. Anyway, so as we, I'm very...
And before you skip to the next thing, Maryland, I think, is actually going to get worse, because Larry Hogan, although he was a very, very moderate Republican, he was still a Republican. Now we've got, basically a far left socialist that will be the governor of Maryland. So the legislature didn't pass things because they knew Hogan still wouldn't sign it. But here, really, kind of all gates are open in Maryland. I think the legislature in 2020 become a lot more Democrat, less, I want to say democratic, but more leftist and more full of Democrats who, in my personal opinion, have nothing to do with democracy. But here we are. That's still what they're called. Democrats.
I agree with you.
Of them in state government in Maryland.
Well, I'm seeing that in our state here in North Carolina. I had somebody say to me, and who is from the great state, she believes that her state is still red. And I said, no, the state is not red. Whether it has the transplants from New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, all the transplants that fled to here for freedom, they were looking for freedom, but yet they brought a lot of their progressive agendas with them. And she also stated, well, the state house and the state senate are Republican, and we have a lieutenant governor that's Republican. I don't care if you have an R next to your name or not. They are not voting Republican in any Republican manner. And having that empty suit at the helm of the state, you don't see him half the time. You even wonder what's going on up there. But my concern is, for the state of North Carolina, they are putting more rules and regs on the people of the state of North Carolina. From the time I moved here in 2012 as a part-time person here, living here, and then becoming full-time here in 2016 and being married to my husband, who was a veteran and who was a gun-toting, God-fearing, believing American, there has been a drastic difference. So you went from a McCrory administration to the empty suit administration. So my concern is, it looks like North Carolina is becoming more and more like a progressive New York, New Jersey, and Maryland. What are your thoughts on that, if you have any background on North Carolina?
The one thing that I do definitely look at with North Carolina is, I think the only glimmer of hope for gun owners in that state is Mark Keith Robinson. He got elected he first really made a name for himself within the 2A world, because he stood up to his, local, I think it was city council, and basically asked them why the heck they weren't holding up his constitutional rights. So, he's good. I would love to see him run for governor. Hopefully that's his next step. I think if he were to win, which, based on his background, he may even be able to pull over some more moderate and Democrat-leaning voters, as long as they ignore the fact that he loves the Second Amendment. Maybe they might vote for him. But, like I said, he really is truly a glimmer of hope. I know he came out with a book this year that really detailed his, coming up in politics really as a political outsider, much like I think you and I's favorite president in recent memory, number 45.
Yes.
But, really outside of that, I think North Carolina is kind of screwed. But Markeith Robinson is doing great. I know he's great with the NRA. He spoke at the convention last year in Houston. I was there. I heard him speak. The NRA ILA, the Legislative Leadership Forum, and he was really among a very strong cast of characters. The NRA specifically limits that event because they don't want everybody coming. So they very much handpick the individuals that get that main stage speaking spot. So the fact that he was one of them is a big deal. He was joined by President Trump, Governor Kristi Noem, himself, and then Governor Abbott. Unfortunately, the convention did happen just a couple of days after Uvalde. So Governor Abbott personally was attending, making sure that his state was healing after that tragedy, but he did appear via video message to the attendees of the convention. So, Robinson, love him. I did, I think, write a piece on his book earlier this year when it came out. Definitely North Carolina gun owners definitely hope that they read his book and, hopefully if he does run for higher office, support him there. But beyond him, like I said, I think he's kind of the only glimmer of hope.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. I think he is the only glimmer of hope. I do think that when you look at the state of North Carolina from the state politics standpoint, you have Charlotte and then you have Wilmington and you have more of these liberal cities and Raleigh, Durham, all very liberal in their thinking. And then you have more of the other pieces of the state that are definitely more red. But again, the trends of voting are definitely looking like a Pennsylvania, the Pittsburgh and the Philadelphia, with everything red in between. So that is a great concern. I do hope he does run, but more importantly, there are a lot of rednecks in this state, both in North Carolina and South Carolina, and they are going to fight till death to keep those two-way rights all together and in one place. And you don't mess with those who are active duty or veterans, because that's where you are infringing upon rights beyond what the executive office of the president thinks or new members of Congress. Talk to me about this new Congress. 118th, it's here. We have all these newly elected members of Congress. Have you been able to ascertain the newly elected officials who are more in the Republican spectrum and totally believe in the two-way and are going to push it hard at the federal level? And do you also see a list of newly elected Democrats who are going to fight it tooth and nail?
So actually, a few weeks before the election, I wrote a piece. It was called, Candidates That Will Defend Two-Way Rights If Given the Chance. A lot of them were in swing seats, which is why I focused in them on that in that piece. So, unfortunately, not all of them won. I wish we would have had a clean sweep off that list. But there are a couple of very, very, very bright spots. Even in the Senate, which after the results of Georgia, unfortunately, is firmly in the Democrat column. We're expecting Senator Sinema to vote with the Democrats still, even though she has left the Democrat Party. So, the Senate's Democrat, the House is Republican. I think, unfortunately, as we saw last year, there are Republicans, both in the House and the Senate, that are willing to vote for gun control. I called them out repeatedly in columns that I wrote for ALN, as well as just straight news reports, because I was very not happy on people, specifically with Republicans that had a track record of being very pro-Second Amendment and really flipped because the public pressure was too much. And, those are really the most dangerous times in our country, right? Like, that's why we have the House and the Senate. Is the Senate is supposed to, since senators are elected every 6 years, the Senate is actually not supposed to respond to the whims, the political winds. You never know which way the wind's going to blow. The Senate is not supposed to respond to that. However, unfortunately, they did. And so I think that was, personally, I thought that was very disappointing to see the Senate do something that the Senate body is actually not supposed to do, because the Senate is there to kind of act as the people that hold the country together, which is why we kind of always have this standoff in the Senate, because that is what the Senate is designed to do. Now, however, like I said, bright spots. I think so. We had outgoing senator from Missouri, Roy Blunt. He was one of the, I think, 14 that voted for gun control. He is out. He has been replaced with Eric Schmidt. If y'all remember President Trump's endorsement of the Erics, where we didn't know which one. Well, one of the Erics won. It was Eric Schmidt. He is Missouri's former attorney general. which I think is great. He made a very decisive move last year where federal agents came knocking for lists of concealed carry permit holders within his state. They were trying to go to local sheriff's offices and get those names. And they cited that, I believe it was the FBI, they cited that as a quote unquote routine check. Guess what? He said no. He told them to go away. He told them to keep their suits in DC and get the heck out of Missouri.
Good.
And they did. So he is, like I said, I think he's going to be a great spot, bright spot in the Senate.
Yes.
Also, we have North Carolina. I know he's not necessarily your favorite, as I found out, but the new senator from North Carolina, Ted Budd, he does have a very strong record on the Second Amendment. And hopefully he does uphold that. He was if not even A+ rated, I believe, by the NRA in his race based on his previous legislative record. So hopefully he will also be a very good voice for gun owners in the Senate. So I think they're definitely your two big ones. JD Vance, obviously, he doesn't have a legislative record, but I believe the NRA did back him in his Senate race as well. And out of the so-called toss-up seats, he was actually, unfortunately, one of the only winners. But, like I said, that means he comes from a swing state. So hopefully, like I said, he doesn't look which way the wind's blowing, but at least as far as his election, he did instill, the faith of gun owners that came out to support him. And, hopefully he will kind of stand by promises that he made on the campaign trail and continue to uphold their rights. Especially after in Ohio, we do have that precedent of Governor DeWine still signing constitutional carry last year, which means that this is an issue that Ohioans care about. Enough representatives voted for their bill. The governor signed it. And I think I wrote in the piece, he didn't rush to sign it, but he knew that that's where the will of the people was. So at the end, he did make a good decision. I think he hasn't always necessarily been the most conservative governor, but if he's good on 2A, that puts him, that puts him pretty high in my book. Again, especially in a more swing state. I think it kind of takes some balls to stand up to, basically a 50-50 split, state legislature, 50-50 split. Block in your state and say, hey, we're going to uphold the Constitution. Thank you very much.
Let me ask you more of a personal, question. What would you do if you were living in one of these states that is trying to restrict 2A? Would you say to that mother? Would you say to that single mom? Would you say to that family, those who were trying to find a better opportunity for their kids in the next generation, and and instilling these values? My godsons are instilled with these values of knowing how to shoot a gun and understanding the importance of it. And that is so much removed from Biden's dictatorship. He doesn't think about that at all. He just thinks about where the money is and who's telling him what to do. So at the end of the day, there is such a powerful force when it comes to parents teaching their children the importance of owning a gun, the license to carry, and how to shoot a gun, whether it is for survival, whether it is for protection, etc. So my question to you is, do you say to those families, do you say to those single parents, you know what, maybe it would be in your best interest to leave X state and go to another state for better opportunities? Now, granted, the governors are going to change, things are going to shift, and we may even see something huge happen in this coming year and announcements made from some of the greatest governors in America right now running for president. So is that where you say, okay, we'll sit tight, or maybe we should go to another state and transition into a better life for the opportunity of everyone in the family, et cetera, et cetera? Not to put you on the spot, but it would be interesting to hear what you have to say, because I know you live in the DC Beltway. And I live in North Carolina. I grew up in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. There's things have dramatically changed, and things have dramatically changed here. But what else has dramatically changed is some of those very conservative states that still allow we the people of the United States, to have our freedoms. What are your thoughts?
I think people should definitely make whatever the best decision is best for themselves and their families, right? Like, as conservatives inherently, we don't want to prescribe solutions for people. We want them to make decisions for themselves. Now, however, if this was me, I would say, I think if you're in a state like California, you're kind of you're kind of out of luck. I think states like that are as far gone as they can be. Now, however, I think one day, if I was a creator and I could prescribe, prophesize the future of America, I would love to see a day when every single state in America passes a right to carry, permitless carry, constitutional carry amendment. Realistically, that's never going to happen. Potentially, we could theoretically have a president that passes that. But again, personally, I actually like the states doing it themselves because I am more of a state rights kind of gal. Now, in states where obtaining these permits is difficult, again, there are groups that are engaging in the legal fights because they believe that under the Second Amendment in the federal Constitution, these rights are, basically bestowed upon every single American. So even in states where it's hard, I think, so personally, like, again, even back when I was a campus concealed carry, campus carry advocate, I would always say, I didn't grow up in a gun-owning household. My father now is very pro-Second Amendment, and my family is from Eastern Europe. I'm half Russian, half Ukrainian. And, I kind of watched with irony where when Ukraine was being invaded by Russia in 2022, almost a year ago now, in last February, where the first thing that Ukraine, which in its national government has a very leftist government, the first thing that they did was actually arm their citizens. And it's like, wow, thank you so much. I actually now live in a country where I have those rights every single day, but I'm glad to see that in a country where my family came from, people kind of had that switch flip on in their head. And
Well
now,
said. Well said. Well said. No, I completely agree with you. Not to interrupt you, but that is a beautiful picture of freedom. That is a beautiful picture of people standing up for their own rights. I think that's so well said. I want to, as we end this interview, and there is so much more to talk with you about as we head into this great new year, but next month, America's Governor Ron DeSantis, has his new book coming out. It's strategically, communications wise, dated wise, right around President's Day, which I thought was very smart for whoever's putting together his book tour. But as we lead into the 2024 contenders, I wanted to cite one of the articles from American Liberty News, which is where you report from. And it talks specifically about, and obviously it just came out last month, but the top contender in 2024 race for president has made a major move to support gun owners, just like we said in the beginning. Florida governor, America's Governor, Ron DeSantis, is twice in the last week, and this was cited in end of December, pledged to support the passage of constitutional, also known as permitless carry in his state. The two following videos, which are, if you can go to AmericanLibertyNews.com, I will provide the link, are talked about by Florida's Voice News last week, put both DeSantis and Florida House Speaker Paul Renner on record with a commitment to get his legislative move done. Well done to a future candidate for president. But I also just want to say on that final note, as you are covering 2A and what is to come with a lot of these Republican governors and what they are doing and leading in the state, I agree with you wholeheartedly. We should not be leaning so heavily on the federal government. It was not intended for that. It is state to state, power back to the states, and I completely agree with you. So as we wrap this, any final words as we head into February, as we head into this new Congress, as we head into, is there anything for our kitchen table discussions that we need to keep on our radar screen as we head into the next couple months, especially as these presidential contenders are going to start to announce?
Yeah, like I said, at ALN, I like to say that we bridge really everything on the right side of the aisle. We have some writers that are more libertarian. We have some writers that are more, quote unquote, neocon, traditional, DC swamp Republicans, like those exist. They have a voice on our site, which I think is unique because I think even really now, as soon as the 2022 election concluded, a lot of publications took sides. At ALN, we will kind of have, like I said, through our writers that hold different perspectives, we will give you whatever perspective really on the right that you can find, which I think makes us very unique, where we don't necessarily prescribe an agenda as a publication. We're kind of that open forum. So kind of within that, I think a lot of our writers are very pro 2A. So we would love to see gun owners not being put on the back burner. I know personally I would not. And to me, this is a very major move from DeSantis with this announcement. As I linked in that article that you mentioned, that you'll have linked down below, he actually said this last year. Anthony Sabatini, who ran for Congress, and I think Florida, I believe it was District 13 or 14, but I could be a little bit wrong on that. But so he was a Republican state representative. He lost in the primary, which means he also lost his House seat because he couldn't run for it again. So he was the lead co-sponsor on that bill last year. He had tried to introduce the bill. I think this was his third time introducing the bill. So they do kind of have to have a new figurehead for gun owners in the state. So it'll be kind of interesting to see who that is. Florida is one of the later legislative sessions that's going to be starting. They don't start until March. So, it'll be kind of interesting to see if they're actually able to get it done. If they're 26 or if somebody else beats them. I think Nebraska is definitely another one to look at. That one's very unique, where they have a unicameral legislature. But I was actually somewhat recently chatting with my friend that's the NRA lobbyist up there. I've known him since my Kansas activist days. He covers both Kansas and Nebraska. And he told me actually getting something passed through a single legislative body is harder than you would think. Because I was like, well, you don't have to get it through both the House and the Senate. Like, why is it that hard? And he told me that it is very hard. So I know he's going to be working very hard up there to get it passed. And, I do believe Pillen might be a little bit more of a moderate governor compared to what Ricketts was up there. Because, he did come from the Board of Regents, and I know he kind of made some comments during his time there, taking some votes that angered conservatives. So I will be interested to see where he is on gun rights. I think if they do pass it through the legislature, I can't imagine that he, as a Republican, would not pass it. But again, he might be more of a DeWine type figure where, he's going to sign it, but he's going to do it kind of reluctantly. So those are the two big states to look at, Florida and Nebraska. My call, I'm putting myself on the record here. That's my call for 26 and 27. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
All right.
And then another big one, I covered this basically as soon as it happened, was in Oklahoma. They start their legislative session, in February. And there's actually a state rep there that wants to expand, I believe it is handgun permits to those under 21, which I'm very interested to see. Because as somebody that was a 2A activist in college, I had to be an activist before I could actually be a handgun owner. And, I knew I worked a job, my entire time in college. I did campaigns. I was driving down the highway alone in the middle of night, being, 19, 20 years old. I wished I would have had a gun. I didn't. But, maybe, thankfully, I never ended up in a situation where I had to use one, but I would have probably felt a lot safer knowing that I had one, at least in my glove box, if not on my body. Personally, I'm a fan for, if you have whenever you're carrying a gun, you have it on your body. I'm not even a big fan of like purse carry. But if I would have been able to have a handgun, and Kansas is one of the most open states in terms of Second Amendment rights. It's the state where I went to college. Love them, but I'm saying, if I could have like my dream wish list, this is what it would be. And it would be expanding those rights to 18 to 21-year-olds, especially now in a day and age where a lot of people in that age range really actually aren't going to college. They're getting jobs. Maybe they're getting a more professional qualification type job. Maybe they're a trucker, right? You talk about 2A rights of truckers. Talk about that web. They pass through 12 states in a day.
Yes, they do.
And you're saying you're a 19-year-old trucker and you can't have your gun on you as you're traveling across the country. That seems a little bit silly to me. So again, this kind of Vic's dream world is what we're playing right now. So a lot of these things will probably take years to happen. But, ideally, that person would be able to have that gun on them. The restrictions on long guns, rifles, or shotguns are a lot less. But, again, with Bruin saying that your 2A rights do not stop at your front door, that means that you need to be able to have your gun on you. And, most people are not going to be walking around with an AR-15, an assault weapon, as the left likes to call them. That's not where you're going to be walking around. And you're going to be walking around with a 1911. You're going to be walking around with a Glock 43. And, I think if you can own a larger gun for home self-defense, you should be able to defend yourself outside the home as well. And, with Bruin kind of setting that precedent, I would love to see state legislatures expand gun rights for those ages 18 to 21 as well.
Yeah.
Specifically, like states that have, again, states that have constitutional carry and they have campus carry. I think they are kind of well set up to have that. And then those campus carry laws would then have to be revisited because like Kansas's, they start at age 21, which is, for a majority of my time in college, that means I wasn't able to have a gun on campus.
Right.
And, for some reason, my last year and a half of college, I was, right? Like what changed? Just the date. That's the only thing that changed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Victoria Churchill, I'm going to tell you what. American Liberty News, I'm really very impressed with what you bring to the table. And, I'm hesitant on getting my AR colored in hot pink just because I may have to protect it. But I've been thinking about getting the hot pink camo for my AR. I'm going to be honest with you about that. I am a gun-toting American, God-loving, fearing country. And I am proud to be a gun owner. I am proud to know how to shoot. I'm proud to know how to protect myself and not to be fearful. And that is what we need to educate. We need to educate the American people. We need to educate the states. We need to educate those who are unaware or fearful because of the fear tactics of the mainstream media. I'm just going to call it, and also from the Biden dictatorship. On that note, Victoria Churchill, I am so honored to have you here as we kick off this amazing new year. Thank you for kicking it off here at Common Sense America. I look forward to having you back. And thank you. Make sure, for all those who are tuning in, follow Victoria on Twitter. It's at @snits_Churchy. She's Pro 2A writer and editor at American Liberty News. And she has some great things coming down the pike. #Hill Happenings and #Campaign Countdown. Until then, we'll see you soon. And thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eden. Glad to be here. Thanks again for having me.
My pleasure.